So welcome everybody once again to Stefan Frank's Photobook Show. This is episode number 9. In Stefan's Photobook series, we are looking at recent and not so recent photo books that you might not know about. Some of them you do, some of them you might not. Today's subject is, can photography be funny? Thank you for joining. I'm Anja from StrudelmediaLive. Most of you know that. Stefan, who has been teaching many classes for StrudelmediaLive, is based in Germany, in Heidelberg. And he will teach more classes for you in the fall. He's taking a teaching break this summer. He's teaching 2 classes right now, actually, but he will teach more in the fall. Yeah, Stefan, thank you so much once again for doing this. And I want to thank everybody else for being here.
Thank you, Anja. Thank you for having me. And thank you all for showing up for an hour of fun. I hope you will not be disappointed. Let me jump right in here and share my screen with you to give you a short introduction into. Let me start with the title. We had a discussion, Anja and I, we had a discussion about the title, and she said, and I had to agree, unfortunately, I had to agree with her. I wanted to have this title, which is a paraphrasing on this disc. And Anja said, oh, nobody knows this disc, and nobody knows Frank Zappa anymore. Hopefully at the end of this, we have a short discussion who was right and who was wrong. I agree with her that the title is much more descriptive now. But Frank Zappa is, of course, a huge touchstone for me, one of my most favorite artists. For him, humor is an integral part of his work. So he's been doing this almost stand-up like comedy sessions in his concerts. And he used it to mock consumerism and TV and Republicans and capitalism. And he always did this with a lot, he made his shows a lot of fun. And so when you look at here, this is a shot by a famous photographer, famous celebrity and music photographer, Norman Seeff, Los Angeles, 1976. So for him, humor is an important thing of his work. When I prepared this, the slides for this little show, you will quickly find out that humor is no fun. So it is really hard work to look at some series how humor actually works and how you can make it work in your photography. So when you're here for a laugh, I'm sorry, maybe I have to disappoint you here. There are a couple of series of humor that may be helpful. Of course, we always come back to Freud, unfortunately. And if you place him in this idea with humor, I think he has this mocking smile on his face always. He wrote a couple of lectures, articles on humor. I just quote from one article here from The Humor, which was actually called The Humor from 1927. And he was a serious man, so this was a new venture for him. So he actually started cracking some jokes in his article. So he told a joke, and he told this joke, and this gives you actually, like always, you get more insight in the person who tells this joke than the joke itself. So he told this joke: on a Monday morning, a convicted murderer is led to the gallows to be hanged. And on his way up the stairs, he says, well, the week is off to a good start. And he used this joke, which you might think is funny or not. He used it to talk about how humor is often used to negate reality. The greatness here obviously lies in the triumph of narcissism. So the laugh of it to yourself, how it is victoriously asserted inviolability of the ego. The ego refuses to be offended by the inducements from reality, to be forced to suffer, and insists that the traumas of the outside world cannot come close to it. Indeed, it shows that there are only occasions for pleasure. So he has this stupid little joke, and he really goes off the bat here. Right on. So if you remember a little bit about Freud, he always has this idea that your brain, your head looks like this, is this constant clash of your subconscious, your ego, and your superego, and all the time they are bickering and arguing and trying to get the best of each other. So this is what happens in your brain. And for Freud, this was the start to go into some kind of relief theory. So the theory that humor is actually something like something that maintains a homeostatic mechanism, something that maintains the pressure by which this psychological tension that is inside your brain is reduced. So I'm always thinking about something like this. So this is my brain. There's always this stuff going on all the time. And humor is just this tiny little release valve that helps us to blow off some steam from time to time. So all these things about relief theory, about the super ego and the ego, they may be true, but are they helpful? Does that help us arrive at some kind of humor in photography? Because this is what this will be about. So I've been looking at some other theories. So this is an interesting one. This is the incongruous juxtaposition theory. So it basically says a joke like this. So you have a glass that is half full or is half empty, and it shows, and it has actually beer in it. So the idea between the incongruous juxtaposition theory is that you take two concepts and they put them together, and there is a tension between these two things. So you put things into a context where we don't expect them. So, and juxtaposition, this is something that we can do as photographers. So we've been doing this for quite a while. Street photography is an excellent example for this. Here is a shot from Vivian Maier, which is not only beautiful and shows you how good a photographer Vivian Maier is, to see that the awning in the background has the same color as the shirt of this little kid here in the foreground, which is actually the thing that makes the shot. But when you look at the faces that you see here, you have this one kid that is obviously in pain, is hurting and is crying, and the other kid that is laughing. So you have two concepts that appear juxtaposed next to each other, and you can't actually bring this together. Why is the kid laughing? Is the kid laughing about the crying kid? Is the crying kid laughing about is the crying kid hurting about, and this is the reason why the kid is laughing. So you can't bring this, you can't solve this, you can't bring this together looking only at this picture. These kinds of juxtaposition can not only be done with one picture, but they can be done with multiple pictures. So, and there is a British photographer, Stephen Laurent, who made a whole book with it. I gave it this colorful title, Chamberlain and the Beautiful Llama. And it contains only these kinds of 101 juxtapositions. And it looks like this. So, and this is obviously two pictures that have that somehow fit together, because they have some traits that brings them together. But of course they are incongruous. They do not really fit together. So, and it goes on like this with the Right Peer and the Jolly Publican. And so this is very typical British humor that you see. But it is a common thing in photo books that you have these kinds of juxtapositions. Sometimes they are funny, but there's the principle of bringing things together that do not belong together, or there's some kind of rift or tension. This is very common to how photo books are constructed. So in this kind of way, humor short circuits things that do not belong together. And we all know what happens when we short circuit things. sometimes it doesn't work out really good. An extension of this, or another way to approach this, is another theory that is called script-based semantic theory of humor. It is by a British psychologist, Victor Raskin. He has this idea that our daily life is governed by some kinds of scripts. So for all kinds of social interactions, we have a script that says, when I go to the grocery store, the person in the grocery store says, good morning. And I say, I want to have a good morning and I want to have 3 pears. So there's a kind of script that we follow here. And Victor Raskin says, once we violate this script, or once we have 2 or more scripts that come together, then things start to go sideways here. So he's telling this joke. So he says, is the doctor at home? The patient asks in his bronchial whisper. No, the doctor's young and pretty wife whispered in reply, come right in. Victor Raskin explains why this is funny by saying we start off with one script, the doctor script, the sick patient that expects help from the doctor for his sickness, and we end up with another script, the lover script, which is a totally different script. And these scripts interact with each other and cross each other, and this is where the joke comes from. I think Freud would be happy about this, that a lot of these theories have some kind of sexual aspect within them. So even when Victor Raskin was talking about something completely harmless, he ends up with something that has some kind of sexual aspect to it. So, your mom. And this is something we can use in photography pretty good. So this is Robert Doisneau, Le Pain de Picasso, which is he starts us with a very simple script of a portrait session, and he's showing Picasso, and Picasso is sitting in the morning table, and he's using this other script where he just goes totally off script and puts these breads on the table, and putting these 2 scripts together, these giant breads that lie there on the table, the third script emerges. The third scene is now Picasso with giant hands on the table. Of course, all these tension relieving, this humor, this has always a relationship to the rest of our life. It is not coincidental that Frank Zappa cracked so many jokes in his shows. He felt powerless against consumerism. He felt powerless against what was going on in the American society. And so he couldn't do so much about it. So he resorted to cracking jokes. So these jokes always have a relationship to the rest of our lives. So they're not only jokes, they always have a deeper meaning. I love this quote from Walter Benjamin, who wrote a lecture on the origin of the German tragic drama. So actually about tragedy, and he's told comedy is always part of tragedy. It's always the other part of tragedy. He wrote, comedy, or more precisely, the pure joke, is the essential inner side of mourning, which from time to time, like the lining of a dress at the hem or the lapel, makes its presence felt. So he was very aware of this relationship between comedy and tragedy. These always go together. But let's look at some examples. We start out with, let's start out with Elliot Erwitt. I don't know if you all know Elliot Erwitt. Elliot Erwitt is a wonderful photographer. I have to look up my show notes here. He was born in 1928 in Paris. His parents were Franco-Russian. He moved at a very early age to the US, specifically to Los Angeles, and became a photographer there. So he did a lot of set photography, documentary photography, news photography, photography for magazines. So he eventually ended up with Magnum, and he is still alive today. So he had a couple of years ago, he had this huge retrospective show, Personal Best, where he collected all the pictures that he collected throughout his whole life. And he made this, and the publishing house made this wonderful, big, large book of him. And he is a very, very, very classic Magnum photographer. So he is funny, he has great moments in there. And he's just an overall marvelous photographer. And a lot of these things have to do with these kinds of weird juxtapositions, like this shot that he did shortly after the war in Germany that says Frauen, so women, and young girls underneath it, and this American soldier next to it. So a lot of his humor comes from these observance, from observing, going on the street and observing scenes that he sees there. Like this one, where it's just observant to what you see, what you can write, what is written on billboards. He's also very aware of the social fabric of those societies. Not funny at all. But let me show you some jokes here. The way that he walks through the streets is he's just trying out all the angles here. Whenever he sees something, he always tries an unnatural angle, tries to get a funny angle in here. I have to show you some beautiful pictures of him. So some pictures are just classics. It's just a classical New York shot. Just wonderful black and white photography. This, of course, is where two scripts interact. So the dog sitting in the car, but it looks like the way he photographs it, he photographs it as if the dog is driving the car. So he got a lot of dog pictures in here. So he was a great fan of dogs. He had a lot of dogs himself. So a lot of his photography is about this juxtapositions of dogs in the world. So here we have two juxtapositions together. So the one juxtaposition is placing these two shots right next to each other, which is I don't know if Arnold Schwarzenegger had objected to this juxtaposition, but it's also juxtapositioning this photo here. So it's a photo in a photo. Famous people. As I said, he was a set photographer for quite a while. He made a whole book. There's a wonderful book on the Misfits. The film by John Huston with Clark Gable and Marilyn Monroe. It's a wonderful book about this. So he knew all the celebrities because he was hanging around in Los Angeles for quite a while. Marlon Brando here, of course. He was a proponent of the photographic one-liner. So some things that he did, they are just a little bit flat, but keep this picture in mind because it will be important a little bit later. He's just a legend because he spent so much time in an important area of the 19th century, has been working relentlessly for over 50 years. So he has seen a lot and has photographed everything. There's also a beautiful shot of just observing similarities between dogs and their owners, birds and appliances. But let me pause here at this moment for a while, because he is, of course, he was a funny man. He cracked a lot of jokes. If you see some of his videos, he's a deeply humanist photographer in the best sense of the word here. And I've rarely seen a picture that shows the grief of a person that is in the limelight right now, but it's of course also just a person who just lost her husband. There are not so much pictures like this, and there are not so much photographers who are able to capture such a shot here. So he was a complete photographer. He was not only cracking jokes, but he took life. He took all of life in. Some famous shots from him because he loved Paris. Here's another juxtaposition that you see here from, this was shot in the Louvre. And of course he juxtaposes this person there. He just waits until it looks like it gets shot by this statue. So juxtaposition and here the way that Erwitt uses is this is just a good book to learn how street photography works, just to see how it works. Some of it did not age well. This is something I have to say. So this is a shot that I think probably you wouldn't take it today, or you would just edit it out. But it shows how humor works. Humor is often some kind of pressure relief. So let's hope we are a little bit further here than we were. People were in the 50s, where everybody was just insecure about everything. And hopefully things like this, you do not find it anymore. But I had to think about Donald Trump and his behavior in public. So maybe we are not so far away from this, as far away as we think from these kinds of sexual insecurities of men. Here, this is a wonderful shot. So sometimes he's just waiting. He's just waiting for something to happen until he finds the right gesture here. So these two statues with the fig leaf and the person in the middle who's also. But as I said, he's just a marvelous, great black and white 35mm photographer. Just marvelous shots in him. Let me end here, because this is one of his most famous shots. It is on a lot of posters. It's hanging in a lot of kitchens. Of course, we have these two scripts here. We have the dog script and we have the human script sitting on the stairs, and they just interact with each other. So they just cross each other. So, this is a must-have. I rarely say this, but this is a must-have. You must have one book by Elliot Erwitt. I do not know if you need more than one, because I think we see at his work, we see that he comes from a time before there were photo books and before there were sequencing. He did not really make any important photo books. And this is something that I think prevents him from being seen today, because there are no photo books of him. There are only these kinds of collections, these personal bests. So let me come to this one. So this is Accent Rarities from Paul Kooiker. Kooiker is a Dutch photographer. And being a Dutch photographer, the Dutch are famous for making beautiful photo books, because they have some very good designers, and this is no exclusion. This is from Dashwood books. It has this, I don't know if you can probably see this, it has a very shiny silvery finish here to the sides. Blue embossed title here. And I sometimes don't know why I included this in this book here. So this book is not funny. It's a book. It's very similar to Elliot Erwitt's book, that it is a best of. So it includes a lot of pictures that Paul Kooiker made throughout his life. It includes pictures of his family. It includes fashion photography, because he's also a fashion photographer. And includes street scenes, and includes weird things that he photographed. And I included it here because it's really, really wonderful at making juxtapositions. So these juxtapositions, they take some time to take them in. But let me read to you what Brett Feuerhelm had to say, because he had this to say when he, in a review for this book, he wrote, "I was at the time considering how closely cyanide and almonds share a space on the tree of life, blissfully coexisting to produce milk for incompetent digesters, while also nestled very close on the same branch which gave Himmler a soft exit." Probably know that Himmler poisoned himself with cyanide. He wrote this in a review of this because he was so struck by these juxtapositions that you cannot really make sense of. Sometimes it starts out funny but gets weird, like this shot, this weird eye. It has some ongoing themes, like these round things that you see appear here. But this is just a study in finding out what the photographer sought here. Like something like this here. This is, if you just have this here, even this is a juxtaposition, this naked man, but he has this very weird shoes on. And you find these shoes a lot. So you eventually find out that, okay, there is some kind of thing going on with shoes. And then you get shots like this. And you soon start to think, okay, there's something weird going on here. So here the shoes return. So interestingly enough, even Brett Feuerhelm, who always has an idea of what things mean and how they work, he does not really mention in his review what this book is about. So it includes a little bit of everything. This is an interesting shot to see. Okay, here he paired this because this is round and shiny, and here this is round and shiny, and this is round and shiny. So there are a lot of similarities here. And now it goes on. So, and this is very true to the idea of how surrealists perceive the world. They perceive the world in that things have certain traits, and the traits are moving through the things, and the traits like being shiny, being round, is something that connects things that otherwise have no similarities to each other. So, and of course, Freud would have a field day with this book. because sometimes a cigar is not only a cigar. So, but it has very many different aspects of his life. It's his own family. It's a cycle of life. It's about all the weird things that you encounter in the world, and how they fit together, and how they fit together photographically, and how they make these one-liners of jokes that you see, okay, this somehow, I have no idea, so this somehow fits together. And this is funny that it fits together. And it is not only funny that it fits together, but it says, okay, these things are somehow connected with each other. Patterns connect things. Well, we cannot see this, but the patterns here in the footsteps that lead actually in two directions. So there's one direction here and the other direction of steps that go here. So it's a very weird picture. And a lot of these pictures have this second level here. And of course, his juxtapositions have these second level here. But this is a very photographic way of perceiving the world, not in what is it that we see, but what are the visual traits of what we see, and only look at the visual traits, put the things together and see what happens in your brain when you put these weird things together. So this is really something that you have to, where you just have to go through. And let me stop on this theme here, because it's not an accident that he included his family in here. So of course, this is all about connections. So it's about how things are connected with each other. So in a way, he constructs an expanded family. So by including all the things that he sees in the world. So this is just a wonderful little book. It's very nicely produced. It's very weird. It is sometimes very funny, and it is very moving. Paul Kooiker, excellent Rarities. So, last book. Let me come to the book that started this nonsense here. This is currently the book that I'm looking at all the time. Robert Cumming, he is a writer, a sculptor, a painter, and a photographer. Was born in 1943, died much too early in 2021. And he was working in these pictures that you see here. This is Robert Cumming, The Difficulties of Nonsense. This is work that he did in the 70s and 80s, mainly in LA. So he was part of this LA scene. If you remember a couple of, I think it was the last show when we talked about Steve Kahn. So he is also coming from LA. So there's a lot of humor in this conceptual photography scene of Los Angeles from that time. So, and this brings together these most of the work that he did in the 70s and 80s. This is Robert Cumming himself. Of course, he would have himself photographed in a weird way, because you can't do a straight portrait with him. He was working mainly with a large format camera. So this is why all his shots are super detailed and super sharp everywhere. He formed this group of people that were working in the 70s, artists, musicians, photographers, and they did this magazine file where they included their work, where they showed their work for the first time. And this is what the introductory article here explains. So the whole scenery, where he comes from, how he worked. Excellent introduction into his work. So, and he started out as a sculptor and then went into photography because he thought that photographing his sculptures is actually can be more effective than looking at the sculpture itself. So being such a crafty person, he was very elaborate in constructing his images. So before he made his images, he spent days, sometimes weeks, sometimes months, planning them out. And let me zoom you in a little here on this, and making these elaborate plans on how to do that, how to build these constructions. And this is the reason why this little book basically contains all his photographic work, because it took him such a long time to make a single picture, starting from the planning over the building of the sculpture until the actual shooting. So let me jump over this and look at the plate. So this is the introduction here to him. This is here. You can see him working in the studio. And let me jump you right into one of his plates here. So he did things like this. So this is watermelon bread. Is zooming on this. And sometimes you just fall flat by marveling, and how could you actually do that? How do you arrive at such an idea? So what he did is he carved out a toast-like shape out of a watermelon, and then he placed an actual toast in it, and then placed this watermelon on a plate and photographed it. So, and this is, of course, this is complete nonsense. But it also uncovers a lot about how we perceive a picture. So this is a picture in a picture in a picture. So we have some kind of concept of what a watermelon is. So here we are talking about this one watermelon script, and he completely blows it up by carving out a shape in the side of it. So not using the watermelon in the way a watermelon is supposed to be used. And pretty much the same is true for the toast, because the toast probably has never dreamed of ending up in this place. And a lot of his photography is like this. So this is a cringeworthy picture here. I even have no idea how he did this. It is called CW and tags. So he has this woman here that's sitting here. She has tags all over her. And it's just a tiny little idea, but of course you start thinking about, these are always starting points to think about why he did this. What does it mean? Of course, he used humor again in the same way that Frank Zappa used it to protest against the conditions. Here it is the conditions of institutions, because I was teaching at the university. So this is the institutional faucet, that just where you can just start the faucet and there is literature or articles just pour out of it. Again, it's a simple idea, but it's a very striking image that he found for this. So, and this is a hard part about this kind of photography. So you can have an idea, but you have to have an idea that actually produces a picture that sticks, like this one. This is Iron Grass and Iron Guns. So again, he is talking about the difficulties of nonsense. Nonsense is difficult. So it's difficult to bring it to a point where it's both, where it works both as a sculpture, as an idea, and as a photograph. Later in his life, his works becomes a little bit more elaborate. So he uses this two. He often uses these two pictures here. This is coffee cup, teacup, and me cup. And coffee cups, teacups, and she cups. And you probably do not see this, but this is a woman's bra here on the right hand. And sometimes I think he fails. So this, for me, this just falls flat. So sometimes when he tries to be too funny, I'm not sure that this always works, which is not a testament to, this is no discredit to Robert Cumming, but this just shows how hard the things are that he actually, where his pictures actually work. So this is one of my favorite. This is chair trick. Okay. Oh, sorry, I've got a bad angle on this. You see that this chair is actually floating here. And on closer inspection, you see that the chair is elevated with wires. So this is a two-part story. So first there is a trick. Then you have to understand the trick. And then he solves the trick for you by saying, oh, I just placed wires on this. I just placed wires on this. So this is, very quickly we get into construction, into telling you what you see and making it explicit what you see. David Campany, who is having an interview with him and was a close friend of Robert Cumming, he pointed out that the beauty of Robert Cumming's pictures is that he did not do them in a studio, but you have all these kinds of foliage here in the background. So there's actually, he's actually placing his constructions inside the real world. So there's an excess of meaning there that the picture gives, and this makes this picture and this resolved trick even deeper, because he says, okay, these are the tricks of the world. Here's another two-liner. So this is black and white and black rope trick. So again, we know the trick, we see the trick, we see it right in front of us, and he's explaining the trick to us. And still the photo works. Here, so this is Mishap of Minor Consequences from 1973. I think the titles of his pictures are often very important. They give away what he thinks this is about, but they're not only about this, but they're also about other things. So here, for me, this is a weird way to talk about time and photography, because you probably can see this. This is a complex setup of a tumbling chair that is tied by wire together with a bucket that is also tied up with wire. And it is placed and wired in a way that it looks like that everything is tumbling. So this actually is set up in a way that it suggests there is movement in there. And this is what the camera is really good at. The camera can stop this movement. It can freeze this kind of movement. But here he then goes one step further. He says, okay, but there's nothing to freeze here because I've already frozen everything. So I've already done that for you. So here your camera is absolutely useless in freezing the movement, because there is no movement here. So, and this is the way that he constructs his images. There are always levels upon levels upon levels to dissect here. Sometimes it's just funny. So this is desk, drawer, stairs. Sometimes it's witty, like, again, 2 shelves plus 2 shelves equals 4 shelves. 2 apples plus 2 apples equals 4 apples. This works because he is also a painter, because he knows, we all know that these, we know all these kind of pictures here from our textbooks, where they appear as drawings in textbooks when we learn how to add things. But here, obviously, he's doing it with real world things, and with so this is about concretization and abstraction, and again at the very same time. And this is a 6-year-old girl and 6-month-old weed. I like this one because it brings his family in, and everybody has to play a role. These are photo notations. So the text reads, remind me to shoot Ansel Adams' Raisin Bread before the end of sunset, Bob. And this is his daughter. And she writes a lengthy letter to say, you reminded me to remind you of that you want to shoot Ansel Adams' Raisin Bread before sunset, which I hereby do. And of course, here is Ansel Adams' Raisin Bread. And Ansel Adams' Raisin Bread consists of this box with raisins on plates and empty loaves of bread. And the other shot consists of the raisins dispersed on this bread. I won't interpret this for you because I have no idea what it means. But this is how it works. This is a shot from the cover here. Beautiful idea to see that we are surrounded by photography all the time, and you end up with all kinds of levels of representation here. This is one of my favorites. This is fast rain and slow rain. What he actually does, he's using wire, and he's painting the wire in black and white to make it appear like this black and white wire. If you photograph it in this angle, it is slow rain, and in this angle, it is fast rain, but it is no rain. It is just a picture of rain. No, it's a sculpture of rain photographed. And again, layers upon layers upon layers. Let me end on this one, because this is 2 double negatives. And this is here a no written both on the negative. So he's painting with developer on the negative. Then there is this structure that says no. But there is this woman's legs that also says no. So a lot of negatives in here. And it took a lot of trial and error to arrive with a shot like this. And these are sort pictures. So they have these first, so what I love about them is they have this first layer of, okay, I look at this, I just have to smile. It's just funny. But it doesn't end there. So it goes on. So there are other levels that say, okay, this is, you have to think about what this means and why he does it like this. So, and that's it. Let's end with a no today. So, Robert Cumming, The Difficulties of Nonsense. Brilliant Aperture book. There are rumors here, because David Campany, he was a close friend of Robert Cumming, and there is a conversation of very interesting interview with Robert Cumming and David Campany. There is a new book on Robert Cumming coming out, edited by David Campany, but I have no idea when it actually comes out and when it will be released.
That's good to know.
Stefan, we have a question.
Sure, shoot.
Stefan, as always, I really enjoyed your presentation and very well researched. I had a question about Robert Cumming. When at the beginning you showed us the magazine that he made, File.
Yeah.
Is that possibly, was he being funny? Is that because it looked like the same layout as Life, and it's an anagram for Life?
Yeah,
and I'm
that
just
was it.
Pardon me?
Yeah, that was the idea behind this
Okay.
this magazine. So it's this one here.
Right. So is
All
that
of it is,
something... Sorry.
all of it is live. So the layout is live, the red is live, the way that photos are placed in here, everything is live, but the content is not. Everything's File.
Okay. And how long did he publish that?
That was pretty short-lived. I think they only did it for 2 years. It only had a couple of editions, couple of magazine issues, so not so long. Because I think it was a very loose group, so people coming in, people going out, so there are not so many of these.
Did you have a sense he was sort of ahead of his time?
I think the whole scenery in LA in the 70s, they were ahead of their time. I think there are so many ideas here. So they've, I think there were 2 things happening at once. So the one thing is there was so much going on in photography at that time that this whole thing about conceptual photography that never really took hold. So it was a very short-lived period when it was really, everybody was doing it. John Gossage was doing it. Ed Ruscha was doing it. So it was a moment in time, but eventually it stopped because there was so many other things going on. I just went this, as Anya mentioned, CO, so the show that was previous to Daido Moriyama is William Eggleston. So it was pretty much the same time when color photography came up. Eggleston became famous, Arbus, Winogrand. So these guys were up and coming, and they were much more approachable than these conceptual photography guys, because it was difficult. It was difficult to look at these things and understand these things, and they were not really didn't get so much traction. And I think they just never really took off. And now we go back to this time and say, oh, whoa, okay, this conceptual stuff not finished. We can work on, we can work with this, we can continue with this.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else has questions for Stefan? Let's see.
So, does everybody know Frank Zappa?
Does everybody know Frank Zappa? Yes. No.
Okay.
Anyway, I don't know if people really want to. Sheila.
No, I don't know him, or not familiar.
Oh, Sheila, then you're in for a treat here. Let me make you a playlist.
Well, Stefan, I just bought the Cummings book. I can't go too far overboard.
Okay.
5 of them left at Amazon.
Well, that doesn't mean anything. I wouldn't believe those numbers.
It
But
doesn't
very
mean much. It kind of jolts you.
Yeah. Stefan, thank you so much. I just really like how you built it up by starting with Elliot Erwitt, which really, in a way, is like a single image photographer, you know, great street photographer, but some of the pairings in that book, I was thinking they were probably not made by him, but by the editor, I would assume, which can also cause problems. And, each publisher might publish this book in a slightly different way. But then going on to Paul Kooiker's work, the way he worked with shapes and all of that. And in a way, those could also be seen as single images, because I think they probably were from fashion shoots and personal photos and, walking around in some small or big city. But the way I feel like starts to tell a story. Elliot Erwitt tells a story maybe within the image, within one image, but he never tells a story in a book, like you said. And the other, and Paul Kooiker, I think his book is a beautiful story.
Yeah. I totally agree. So I think we see a couple of things here. So the 50s, we have to remember that in the 50s, you did not work in projects. You did not work in books. So you were just working in jobs. So Elliot Erwitt that's why I mentioned him. He's a working photographer. So he was just sent to go to the Misfits shooting and make set photography. And this is how he arrived at all his images. So the idea of pairing images, making sequences of images, that only came later. And I think that if you compare it to Robert Frank, for example, who was not so far away from this, sometimes even in the style he photographs, he was not so far away from this. But his fame, of course, comes from the Americans. It comes from working in a project, being focused on a certain topic, sequencing, turning it into a book. Right. So Elliot Erwitt never had that. So that was not the custom in the 50s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else for Stefan? All right.
So is Stefan taking a break from these talks over the summer too?
Yes.
That's a very good question.
I have to replenish my bookshelves.
Stefan, will there be another one in June, or is this it until the fall? Or should we talk about this outside of the actual talk?
I actually have not thought about this.
Yeah, well, we can talk about that. Let's see what happens. Yeah. But Sheila, thanks for asking that.
Thanks for asking. Yes.
All right.
Thank you for being here.
Exactly. Thank you all for being here, and see you at the next one, either in June or in the fall, and see you online in other classes. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.